I also think that we put a lot of pressure on athletes really early about these things, rather than just letting them have more curiosity about the process, right? Like, don't talk to them about what they need to do to get recruited their freshman year. Let them like have fun figuring out rowing and pushing themselves and, oh, when I do this, my split gets faster. I'm going to do that more. And like let them have more curiosity about that. I think once we start putting like these end goals on things, people lose their curiosity. And then when they lose their curiosity, they lose the enjoyment of the process. And if you don't enjoy the process, you'll never get as great of an outcome as you could if you were enjoying it the whole way.
Let's do it. Why not? Yeah, I think we're on. Yeah, we are set. Cool. So for everyone listening, we have back for, I don't even know where we are, 9, 10, 11 episodes, the most frequent guest of the At 2000 podcast. We have Delaney McGuire, associate head coach of Eastern Michigan University. Looks like she is, at the boathouse or in the indoor training facility probably now as they kick off their 2026, which is exciting. We'll talk about that here in a second. Delaney, for everyone who knows and has tuned in, she's on here all the time. We both love talking about training, about recruiting, about college rowing, about everything that kind of goes into this sport along with performance. And when we have these conversations, they're quite candid and us just kind of talking about whatever things we find interesting. Today is going to focus mostly on the training side of things, especially here in winter training. I have a couple kind of bullet points regarding 2K performance and the work that's required and basically how to manage different training cycles and ruts and all these different things. We'll dive into that. But Delaney, before we get started, I want you to start with just where are you? What's going on? What's the season looking like? I think you said in our conversation before we hit record that you guys are a few days into training, kind of for 2026. Talk about that, but also what I wanted to bring to your attention that I'm very curious to hear from you. I just finished, right before we logged on, I just finished my next newsletter that I'm sending out to a bunch of athletes in our membership, the ATT Collective. And what it's about is just the different tiers within Division I rowing specifically. And I didn't tell you about this question and all that. So I just want to kind of see where you run with it. I know today's mostly focused on training, but again, this newsletter is going to go out to all of our athletes in the membership tonight. And I finished it and I was having a lot of fun. Just kind of, it's a little bit longer than my normal ones because there is so many differences within Division I rowing, the different tiers and all these different things. And the question I want to start our conversation is for you, in my opinion, and the way I like to phrase it is there's the haves and there's the have-nots within Division I rowing. And the categories I used are, and this could turn into a 30-minute conversation. Hopefully it doesn't. We'll keep it to training and what we have on the original agenda. But the categories that kind of are within the haves and have-nots are differences in funding, in resources, in opportunity, in coaching, and the ability to have 5 coaches on your roster, or maybe it's just a head coach and two or an assistant and a couple of volunteers. The haves and have-nots within rowing and how athletes can understand that not every Division I program is the same. When you talk about 90 Division I programs on the women's side, you talk about give or take 40 Division I programs on the men's side, the lightweight programs that exist. There's a vast difference between the teams that are operating and attacking a grand final at NCAAs to the teams that are trying to qualify for NCAAs to the teams that are trying to, win the conference. Just using women's rowing as an example, as someone who's been at Eastern Michigan for so long, let me caveat that with there's a lot of gray area in between. And the majority of the programs, it's not binary in the sense of haves and have-nots. The majority fall somewhere in the middle. Take that and run with it. Maybe start out with where the current status of where you are in the season here in the winter, but then take that where you want. haves and have-nots within Division I rowing in the eyes of aspiring college rowers who are trying to figure out what is the best fit for them?
Yeah. As you mentioned, we just got started on Monday. Monday was our first day of class, first day of practice. So we're on the ergs right now. The winter is here in Michigan for sure. It's like 15 degrees here today, so we're certainly inside. But we're in our 8-hour training weeks this week and next week. So for those listening that aren't familiar, the NCAA puts hours restrictions on all sports, depending on whether you're in season or out of season. So you have some flexibility in when you use them. So we choose to use a couple 8-hour weeks when we return from winter break, just to sort of give the team the opportunity to adjust back to their school schedule, kind of get a rhythm going before we go into full training at the end of the month. And when we're in full training, we're 20 hours a week is the permitted amount of time. So 8-hour weeks for us just looks like 4 days a week, 2 hours on the erg each day. And then the athletes are on their own for whatever else they want to do. And then 20-hour is we're in our full, 6 days a week schedule. So that's where we're at. Just it's training time for us right now, which actually I love. I know some coaches, erg season is tough because you feel like you're just stuck inside and you're watching erging, but I think it's a fun time to work with individuals, in a more one-on-one way than you can on the water. And, you and I love training. So I love just the idea of like helping athletes attack something that's difficult and how do we continue to progress forward. So that's fun. Okay, to answer your question though, like that when you have 90 programs, you also have to think from an institution standpoint. So the school itself, think about how many different kinds of schools you're dealing with, right? You've got public, you've got private, you've got public schools that are as hard to get into as private schools. You have academically extremely rigorous institutions, and then you have the institutions that seemingly most people could get into, maybe on the academic side of things. So along with all of those variations, you get a lot of variation on how those institutions choose to support athletics and rowing individually. I think, on the women's rowing side of things, there's been a lot of support for women's rowing as a growing sport at the NCAA level as compared to men's rowing since the passage of Title IX. So I think you're going to find, sort of like you said, that gray area, between the power conferences, so your Big Tens, your ACC, SEC, and then your mid-major conferences like the MAC that we're in, the A10, the Patriot League, where there are schools that are in mid-major conferences that have resources similar to some of the schools that are in the power conferences, but sometimes are overlooked because of the conference that they're in and the group of schools that they're grouped with. And then on the flip of that, you have schools that are in these major conferences that maybe are not funded the way you might think of a Texas, right? Or I'm thinking like in the Big Ten, like Washington being at the top of the Big Ten. When you get down towards the bottom of the Big Ten, sometimes you might find like, wow, the disparity between Washington and whoever's down here could be massive, and you're still in that power conference and the institutions are similar. So for an athlete navigating that, it's really hard to know without doing your research, I think. Your point about coaching staff, it had me thinking about, an easy thing to do is go on team website, take a look at their roster, see how big their roster is, and then look at their coaching staff. how many coaches do they have listed on staff, and look more at their full-time coaches. Usually it's listed like volunteer, or if they're listed as an assistant, they're usually like somewhat full-time. And like, how does that add up? Like, if you're looking at a roster of 70 athletes with, 5-6 full-time coaches, it's pretty solid. Maybe you're looking at a roster of 50 athletes with 2 full-time coaches. That, break it down in your mind, like, okay, how much individual time am I going to get if that's something that you're seeking? Like, to give an example, a coach that I know of who took over a new program this fall struggled to get assistants on board. He was by himself for a couple of months, like 4/8 of athletes on the water, one coach. And so those are interesting things to think about. And it's really, it's hard for high school athletes. Use your resources, talk to your coaches, talk to, people like you, who have maybe just a little bit better insight into different programs and how they're structured. Because it is like, you never know what you're going to find, and the variation is massive. And it's like, what's important to you? Like, I was just looking at, I saw Clemson posted some of their facilities the other day. And they've got all these like really awesome recovery tools in their athletic center for their athletes to use. Got like red light beds and massage chairs, and it's like, that's really cool. You're not going to find that at Eastern Michigan. We do not have that. But we have other things that maybe Clemson doesn't have, and when I say things, it might not be like tangible items like that, but we've got a little bit of a smaller team. We have a 4-person staff. We get a lot of one-on-one time with our athletes. So you have to kind of figure out what is of value to you in that wide range of what's offered. I don't know if that's helpful. Because as we're going, I keep thinking of more things. Like, it's such a wide open array of things.
And the danger of turning this into a recruiting talk might actually be a reality now, because I do have some follow-up questions, and we'll get into more training here as we go. But I think one of the things that you referenced that's really actually a good thing for people to think about is number of coaches to like athlete ratio is almost I'm thinking of it now, and I'm kind of like, again, I have no kind of measured like, hey, this is what I do, like, and I advise, but it's interesting. But it's like, you can kind of see, the certain levels of support that a school provides to a team based on the number of positions, full-time positions that they have available for this specific team. If a team is willing to commit 4 or 5 or 6 salaries to a specific team, right? Like, you have a pretty large coaching staff over there. You guys are a well-supported team. Texas probably has as many coaches as they can get, just to use them as an example, as a team that I've written the launch for them and gotten to sit down and chat with Coach O'Neill. They're like, it's unbelievable, the program there. And there's more than just them at the top end of Division I rowing. But using that as kind of like a test in terms of, okay, like, I want to look at this team. How many are they? Do they look like a team that is, can I use the number of coaches that they have as a way of seeing like, okay, well, that's a different degree of support that's provided to this team from the school, because the teams are getting most of their support and resources from the school's athletic department and so on and so forth. So that's a very interesting one. What I want, my follow-up to you is, how does this affect the recruiting side of things? In the sense that 90 plus teams, the haves and have-nots, some of these teams are, the haves and the true haves, where like they have everything. And by having everything, the desire to go to those schools is probably very competitive. Then you have the schools that have a lot, but maybe don't have as much as, say, some of these top end, grand final type crews, or they don't have the reputation of like an Ivy League, where it's like, okay, well, I'm going to go there no matter, regardless of what the resources look like, all these different things. From a recruiting standpoint, you're sitting there at, 730, 740, 750 on the girls' side. On the women's side, you're, going into senior, or you're, in your junior year, sophomore year, whatever, doesn't really matter to you. Like, how does it affect the recruiting side? Broad question, take it wherever you want, but knowing that there's so many different tiers within rowing at the Division I level, especially on the women's side, how does that affect, or what question should you be asking as a aspiring college rower who maybe isn't 7'10" and gets offers from every school in the country?
Yeah, I would be really direct. I was just having this conversation with a friend yesterday about the failure of both collegiate coaches and high school coaches to be direct with athletes about what the standard is at their program and whether or not this athlete can truly come to this program and thrive and be successful at a level that they want to be. And if you're not getting that information from a coach directly, you need to ask. So like if you're a 740 and let's say you're going into your senior year, end of junior year, and you're still about 740 and you have aspirations of going to a top 20 program. A question that I would ask is, when I walk in the door, if I get no faster, if I walk in the door at 740, where am I on your team? And hopefully the coach gives an honest answer. And then think about that. Like if the answer is you're going to walk in and likely row in our freshman 8, and, just know that we'll probably have 2 or 3 freshman 8s. So, from that group going into your sophomore year, that's a huge group that we have to kind of narrow down to get into some of these varsity boats. Like, think about that and how that aligns with what you want. And maybe that is what you want. And, then that's great. But if your expectation is that you want to be able to go and get out and compete, for the conference championship, for, NCAAs, let's say, right? Like a program that's going, just remember 1V, 2V, and varsity 4 compete at NCAAs. So these are rosters that, now with the roster cap, you're at 68. So you're probably carrying about 68 at the cap. And you are cutting down to, 23 athletes that are going to NCAAs, probably taking a couple spares, 25, right? So is that an aspiration of yours, and where do you fall? I think you just need to be direct. I think that's something that we all need to be better about. I think we need to be more direct, because I think we're doing a disservice to a lot of high school athletes who they just don't know, because like you said, there's just way too many programs to really understand. Right. And you might be familiar with some of the programs that are local to your area, and you have friends who have gone on to row there, so you have a little bit better idea. But, there are athletes that are shooting out questionnaires all over the country, programs they don't truly know much about, but have an aspiration that maybe if I could, I would like to check that place out. We have to be more direct about what the expectations are, because I think athletes get in situations where they go to programs and they get there and they either end up leaving the sport, which really sucks for the sport, because they're not having a good experience, or they're leaving the school. And I just find in our sport, the first one is usually what happens. I don't know why. There's a lower likelihood of transfer as compared to other sports, right? Like you see it in basketball, football, all these other sports, kids just, I'm just going to transfer. I'm not getting playing time here. I'm going to transfer. For whatever reason, we don't see that as much. We see a lot of just like, well, I guess I'll just quit rowing and find something else to do on campus. So don't be afraid to ask the hard questions to both your high school coaches and collegiate coaches that you're talking to.
I love that, and the transparency that can happen and should happen. I think a lot of it is the messaging, from the college level to the high school level, or from the high school coaches to their high school athletes, and kind of trying to clean up and be more direct with that messaging. I think is very important, and it will save a lot of kids a lot of emotional roller coaster that it comes from. I need to get to this score by this point to make sure I have any chance of success. And I want to bridge off of that question, or what you just said, where like if I'm an athlete who's 740, which is a competitive high school athlete, like you're not the top you're probably in the top tier at your club, but if you're in a competitive club, you may not be in the top, but you're probably in that top third, right? Top quarter. The follow-up to that is, okay, well, if I'm walking in at 740, if you're talking to the coach, and how you want to message that to the coach depends on who you are and your personality and all these different things, but these are worthwhile things to investigate. If I'm walking in at 740 and I do everything right, and I'm at every practice, I'm competing, I'm working as hard as I can, and it took me a lot to get to that 740, and the fastest I get to in my 4 years at said university is 720, which is pretty fast. Like, you're moving, right? Depending on your size and all these different other intangibles and tangibles that go into it. I go from 740 to 720 as a senior. Looking at that trajectory and having a real honest reflection of, if I get to college and I have this actually pretty solid growth, right? Because going from 740 to 720 is probably an average growth of a athlete who is doing everything right. Maybe not the anomaly who breaks and goes off and goes 30, 40 seconds faster, but for the most part, 20 seconds is probably pretty good. Then asking yourself that honest question of, who am I in terms of the ranks of this team and my status on this team, in the sense of, do I have a chance of making meaningful boats and contributing to a conference championship or an NCAA roster? Asking yourself that question, and if that is not in any way on the horizon, is that the path that you want to pursue? And we've had this conversation before on this podcast in our however many episodes. Take that and run with it. Kind of just, that 740 to 720 trajectory. And in the back of your mind, what questions you should be asking yourself, is that the path that you want to pursue? Again, broad, but give me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think it really comes down to having a little bit more thought about truly like what that would look like for you at any given program. Like we talked about, top 25 programs, 740 to 720. It depends on the program, but it still might not be fast enough for an NCAA boat. Depending, right? It depends. Mid-major, different story. Like 740 to 720, you're probably pretty competitive on that team at some universities. So do you have a want to really be a part of that core group, or is yours more of a supporting role? Are you okay being in the third eight, in the fourth eight? Because there's still value there. I think that's the other thing that sometimes we as coaches forget to talk about, is like, we do have to focus on our point scoring boats, but that's not to say that I don't value every single athlete that's in here putting in work every day. You can still bring something to a team, regardless of which boat you're in. But are you going to bring something positive or something negative if that's your trajectory, where like maybe you don't end up in a point scoring boat? So now maybe, you're a little bit, got a little chip on your shoulder, maybe towards the coaching staff or your other teammates who are seeing maybe a little bit more success than you. I think you have to think about that. It's not all about just like all the shiny, cool stuff and benefits that you get as an athlete. It's the day-to-day at most programs is going to be similar. So do you want to be competitive, or do you want to be just a number in the room? And you have to really like have some self-reflection about that. And where are you on your high school team? So you talked about that, like being in the top quarter or top third. Maybe if you're coming from a big club, then maybe, going to a top 25 program where it's still the case, where it's like, well, I'm still not ever going to be in the top 10%. I'm okay with that. That's where I've always been, and that's where I like being. Then awesome. I think where it can be tough is when you are like the, by and large standout of your program. And now you're going into a collegiate program where you're not. And if you're not ready for that, if you're not expecting that, and if you don't have the right support system to help you handle that, some athletes can struggle with that.
I love that. That is again, like, I think, in the sense that, like, I just think that there's so much value in that self-reflection that people should have. Like, if you want to be the person on a roster and be in the top boat from stroke one and all these different things. Okay, well, you have to be very honest with the programs that you're looking for and what's that trajectory looking like. Do you have a realistic chance to have that, be a reality? Or if you're someone who is comfortable working through the ranks, knowing that you may or may not get to the point where you are part of, a varsity eight or whatever it may be, are you comfortable with that climb as well?
Yep.
Being, again, you're in that sense, you're not just a number, you are a value add as long as you're a good teammate and all these different things. But if you're just going there just to kind of wear the brand and the gear and all that, that's a different conversation as well. And, what spots are you taking from people who maybe do want to kind of go to a school like that and make that climb? So again, the self-reflection, I think, is very worthwhile for people to have in those situations. And the fact that there's 90 schools that support women's rowing at the Division I level, I think not being afraid to reach out to a school that maybe your teammates have never heard of, or they didn't know that women's rowing didn't or existed at that school, because it's not one of those brand names that, especially on the women's side, you see playing Saturday college football on a weekly basis, or the Ivy Leagues, because every single one of them have competitive Division I rowing. If you go out on a limb and see like one of these teams that maybe aren't that kind of brand name, well, there might be opportunity that exists there that you wouldn't otherwise have, because everyone knows the brands and everyone's going to be going to them first as that first line of filtering. So anyway, I love that. I love the recruiting side of things. Anyway, let's talk a little training, right? Unless you have additional thoughts, feel free. But let's talk a little training. We're here. It's winter. I think I had a couple of notes that I think are interesting for people as we get into this time. It's January. There's the college landscape in terms of what you guys are preparing for with your team. There's the high school landscape in terms of people who are trying to go off in their own college, or they're just trying to get ready for a successful spring season. Either way, it's winter time. It's a training focused time. Let me just kind of start with, okay, and actually here's where we can kind of kick things off, Delaney. For you, as you look at the winter time and January, you kind of highlighted it before in your opening, when you're talking about that you love the training and being able to do a little bit more one-on-one work with an athlete in the training side of things. To you, like for college and then even high school, like what is the primary goal of these next 3 months, January, February, March, when most people then are back on the water preparing for the spring season? And if you go down the high school route, you're kind of thinking both short-term and long-term. And actually in the college route, you are too. You're thinking short-term and long-term because you may be a freshman, sophomore, junior. So it's not just about this spring, but it's the long-term. Take that and run with it. Just winter training, what it means to you, what athletes should be thinking about at this current time.
Number one, fitness. That's, it's hard to get a lot of specific rowing, technical development in the erg room. You can do a little bit, but a lot of that's going to happen on the water. So the erg is a fitness tool. It's a massive driver of fitness. I mean, you wouldn't see everyone using it if it didn't work. So that's number one. Number two, I think this one has developed for me over time, but it's the time for you to build your own habits around training and racing. It's a trial and error time. Like it is a free time to fail, like to try and fail, right? You're not attached to anybody else. It's your own result. So if you try something new, and it doesn't work, it only affects you, right? You're not in a boat where it could be maybe detrimental to the crew to go rogue, at random. So it's a great time to try a new approach to a test piece, and maybe it doesn't work. All right. Try a new mental approach to your day-to-day practice. Try new nutrition habits before training sessions. Like for us, that's huge. Figuring out how to fuel for a 90 to 100-minute session in the erg room where it's hot and humid. It's early in the morning. This is a time where there's nothing to lose. If you eat something bad and it doesn't sit well, tomorrow try something else until you find something that works. And that's where I say, like, it's a habit building time, because then you figure out what works. And now that's your thing going forward. Like when we get back out on the water, when we talk about getting prepared for racing and how you mentally approach racing, you should be building these habits up over time where, you know, like for me, my pre-training warm up and mental preparation is the same on any given like Monday or Tuesday of the week as it is on the day that I line up to race. So I think that's really important, especially when you're talking about developing as a whole athlete. And I know that you talk about this like athlete 1.0 versus athlete 2.0. I think the winter is where you develop those 2.0 habits, because you can just focus on yourself. You don't have to worry as much about what everyone else around you is doing. So I think those are my big ones. Yeah. I'm curious, like, do you have something to add to that? Like, how do you think of it?
I think, and there's one that I want to kind of dig deeper into. I think you said being comfortable, like don't be afraid to fail and all these different things, which I'm going to circle back around to, because comfort with failure. And I speak as someone who works mostly with high school athletes now, and kind of seeing them as they stack all these different, levels of expectation on themselves in the winter and beyond. But to me, like you kind of said, like the winter to me, and this is the way that we run it, with our winter training program and all these different things. Like it's about separating yourself from the water, separating yourself from performance, and focusing on the foundations that come with true training and the development side of our sport, and the passion for those two elements, the training and the development, that then go into even more successful performances once you do turn your attention back to the water. I think if you look at these next few months as just a necessary evil that you have to just deal with, well, you're going to carry that same outlook with you onto the water. If you look at it as an opportunity to, like you said, develop the skills, develop the comfort with training and exposing yourself to different levels of intensity, and making sure that you're checking the box with new habits like strength training, and making sure you're integrating that where you don't have to think about a race on the weekend and being a little bit sore, adding in some mobility and all these different things, you have this kind of fail-free time where if you whiff on a 2K, which is what I want to circle back to, if you whiff on a 2K here in January, you have what's going to happen, right? No coach isn't going to pull you from a boat, right? No one's rowing right now. So you have the opportunity to take a little bit more risk than, say, a test piece in April or May, when there's a little bit more stakes on the line and you want to be a little bit more refined in your approach. Well, guess when you learn the different layers of your approach, you learn it in the winter when you have time to experiment, right? So I think those are some of the things that I think about. And again, that comes with that, the athlete 2.0 is the athlete 1.0 is the one who does everything right in the boathouse. They show up on time, they give their best effort in each and every practice, and they're a great teammate, coach's dream at the boathouse. The athlete 2.0 does everything that the athlete 1.0 does, but they take care of their body off the water, away from the boathouse. They get to sleep on time. They're doing mobility at 9:00 before bed. They're waking up at the same time every day. They're holding themselves accountable on the weekends so that they don't burn themselves out for Monday's practice. That's the athlete 2.0. So anyway, anything that you have to build on that side, the kind of pillars of winter training?
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. It's all about refining all of these bigger concepts. It's like you don't have to worry about all the little details right now. It's about the big basics.
No. And I think bridging off of that, you referenced it before, but and this is a topic that I wrote down, where it's just break, or and again, we'll use 2K performances as kind of thing. And again, your lens of things as a college coach is a little bit different in the sense of your direct approach with your athletes. You guys are training for a specific task to be successful on this one weekend throughout the year. And then what's the journey to be able to get there and put up our best performance at that specific time? I want to bring you, as someone who works mostly with college athletes, to the high school side of things, because you are an avid trainer. You exercise and train and run marathons and all these different things. You're someone who puts yourself in, you walk the talk just like anyone else. And in high school, athletes are trying to keep their eyes on the target of maximizing performances on the water in the spring, but they also have the expectation of, I want to go off and get recruited, and my teammates are getting recruited, and I have to perform well on 2K and all these different things. And I'm experiencing it a lot as someone who works with high school athletes now, but this fear of failure, this fear of putting together a bad performance, this almost invisible force that's telling you this 2K is probably could be your last one ever, and you will never have an opportunity to get faster if you don't execute on this piece. So you have to go and do either something completely outside of your norm, or you're going in because you're afraid of failure, and then going through that process actually impacts you even more because now you have all these other expectations that you're trying to balance. Take that and run with it. Just again, like, I think the idea of like the long-term trajectory, and in many ways the process is how you get those results. And if all you do is think about the outcome, you're actually influencing negatively your ability to go about the process. Whatever lens that you want to take that with, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's exactly it, is that your day-to-day then becomes all about the 2K rather than all about whatever that day is. So if it's a 3x20 steady state and all you're thinking the entire time is that if I'm not at X number of splits above my goal 2K, then I'm not going to hit my goal 2K. And you could translate that to whatever you're doing. If you're out on a run and you have a goal of running, a 5K at X amount of time, and oh, well, my easy pace for that is this. And if I'm not at that, then I must not be good enough for that 5K time. We've talked about it before on here, but more than likely, today, if you sit down for a 3x20 with the goal of, I want to break 7:45, we'll say in April, right? I want to break 7:45 by the time we're getting ready for our championship segment of our season. And it's January, what is it? January 15th? Yeah. Okay. Well, my 3x20 on January 15th is probably still going to be, a little slower than whatever my April goal is. April is kind of a far way away right now. So when you spend too much time thinking about April, you're missing the point of just executing today. And to your point, you can have a failed 2K and not report it to any coaches. It's okay. We actually just had this conversation with our team. They have a 30-minute that they have to do next week on their own. We're doing like a land workout in our indoor practice facility, like turf field, next Friday morning. And in order to get to do the indoor workout, they have to pass their 30-minute at the standard that we've set for them. So for some of them, it's at their PB +3 splits. And for anyone else that's not already under 208, they have to hit a 208. So if they don't pass the 30-minute, they don't get to do the indoor workout, they'll erg. But we were telling them yesterday, look, if you sit down on next Monday to pull your 30-minute and you don't hit it, you don't have to report it to us. It just needs to be done by Thursday night. You could take another crack at it another day, especially if you get close, right? Like if it's like, I went, 208.5 and I didn't feel good. I wasn't in a good rhythm. You know what? I'm going to reset. I'm going to do this again in a couple days. You can do that. So in the recruiting process, it's the same way. You could have a 2K that maybe is not your best. You don't have to put it on your profile. You don't have to send it to me. You can wait until you have the good one, right? And we know that. We know not every single time you sit down is a home run. We don't expect that. What we expect to see is just gradual progress over time. So I also think that we put a lot of pressure on athletes really early about these things, rather than just letting them have more curiosity about the process, right? Like, don't talk to them about what they need to do to get recruited their freshman year. Let them like have fun figuring out rowing and pushing themselves and, oh, when I do this, my split gets faster. I'm going to do that more. And like let them have more curiosity about that. I think once we start putting like these end goals on things, people lose their curiosity. And then when they lose their curiosity, they lose the enjoyment of the process. And if you don't enjoy the process, you'll never get as great of an outcome as you could if you were enjoying it the whole way.
Man, that's a good one. That's a good way to think about it. And that's a clip right there. That was good. Bridging off that, and again, I want to kind of keep you in the lens of just training athletes in general. Your athletes, high school athletes, any athletes who are have a goal in mind, right? For your athletes, it might be to make the varsity 8 one day, or this spring, and be able to go off and have a chance to compete in the V8 at the conference championship. It might just be to, hey, I want to be in one of the top 2 boats. I want to be in the top 4 on the erg depth chart. Like I want to be top 4. I want to break a record that's up on the board, right? I know you guys have the record board there. I want to ask you, and I want you to just provide one of the things I've been messaging a lot, and I made a whole solo episode about this at the end of 2025, and I've been telling a lot of the athletes that I work with on a daily basis, and it's kind of just been something I say to athletes all the time, especially after a poor performance. And from your time in the garage, like every session we end at the whiteboard talking about the training day and what we did and what we can learn and the big takeaways from this particular session. And one of the things I've been constantly repeating, and I just want you to provide your thoughts on and what it means to you at this point. I've been telling them, accept that the path will be messy. And I have, again, like to me, like it speaks to the ebbs and flows that go into the pursuit of a goal, and being able to understand that there will be cycles, both positive and negative, that influence your ability to get there. But if you stay on route and you keep that long-term vision in sight and you weather all the different punches, your ability to get there, you're putting in the work that you can do to best position yourself. Doesn't mean you're going to get there, but you have to accept that there's going to be messiness along the journey of training and being able to, in the pursuit of something that means a lot to you. Take that, like, what does that mean to you? Accept that the path will be messy in this light, whether it's for your athletes at home or your athletes there on campus or any athlete at home. What does that mean to you? Even yourself, as someone who has individual goals as a marathon runner and all these different things. Like, just what does that mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, we're all just people, right? And like being a rower is just one part of who you are. And you've got school, you've got your family, you've got friends, maybe you have a job, maybe you do some volunteer work, you've got all of these other things as part of your life. So naturally, there's going to be seasons for all of it. Like, right? Like, you're going to have times of year where you can really focus on rowing, where, maybe academically it's not too difficult. Like when I'm thinking of collegiate rowing, I'm thinking of, beginning of the semester before finals and papers and projects and everything start piling up. That's a season of the year where I can go pretty all in on rowing and probably see some pretty good progress in my rowing. And then when I hit that heavy academic end of the semester, like for us, end of the fall semester, heading into the holiday break, I'm probably not going to see as much rowing progress, but at that point, what I want to see is my academics finish strong. For myself, when I'm looking at like my annual calendar of, okay, I want to get a race on my calendar. I want to race a marathon at some point this year. And I look at it and I'm like, well, a bad decision for me would be to put a marathon on the calendar in April or May. Why? Because we're in the middle of our season, and like it or not, running has to take a little bit of a back seat in April and May for me. That doesn't mean that I got worse as a runner, even though I might go out for a run during that time and maybe my speed is not at my peak. It just means that right now my focus is somewhere else. And that's okay. Until you are on the national team, and even on the national team, most of them have jobs where there's still a balance happening. Until you're truly a professional athlete who's just getting paid to play, you're always going to be balancing these different areas of your life. So you have to be okay with when something else has priority. Rowing I might not hit my PR right now this week. But I know that in 4 weeks, I'm getting a little bit of a break academically, and I'm really going to lock in to my rowing training. Now, that's not to say that during these like ebbs and flows, you're not training at all, right? Like I'll still train during our spring season, but I just can't train maybe as high a volume or as much intensity during that time because I don't have as much time, but I'm still getting something in. So you don't want to ever just like take completely off, but that's where you're going to see those ups and downs. But as long as you're consistent through the entire year, I think, like to your point, you're going to have these pockets of progress where you are going to see progress. What you have to be careful about is not then really getting down on yourself when you're in the in-betweens where it feels like, did I just get like slower? No, probably not. It's probably just that your focus is a little bit elsewhere. That, especially I think for a high school and collegiate athlete, the volume is not quite high enough to where you're probably overdoing it, right? Like you're probably not seeing a backslide from something like that. If you're seeing a backslide, it's probably just from a shift of focus to another area of your life.
And I think one of the things that came to mind that you reminded me of is, or one of the things I talk to athletes individually about, especially if they've had a bad session, a bad training day. I think one of the issues that arises is when they are in different seasons of their life where rowing has to take a back seat naturally, but in their mind, they are operating at a state where it's not taking a back seat. It's at the forefront. And the pressures that they put on one bad performance, one bad training session, one bad 3x20, one bad, long distance run where it normally feels easy, but it felt terrible today. You treat it in isolation as a day where I'm getting worse, I'm getting weaker, I'm getting slower. Why aren't I, operating at full capacity right now? When in reality, you just came off of final exams. You had the flu for a week. You had, all these other different commitments that you had to get done, but you're going into this particular workout throwing all that to the wayside and thinking everything is normal, and you're not actually putting the story in its proper perspective of the lead up to this performance. Probably you weren't optimally positioned to be successful in this one particular performance, and understanding that. And if you don't understand that, you're going to think that the whole world is falling and I'm a failure and I'm not, meant for this sport, even though it was just this one part that was influenced by all these other external factors. What are your thoughts on that? Because I'm sure you've experienced it, I've experienced it, and if we've experienced it, high school athletes have experienced it probably regularly, because again, they have a lot of them have trouble compartmentalizing and bringing the story and the context into their performances. They are under the expectation that every performance has to be, I am optimized for every performance, and they all have to be PRs or exception, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, the reality is you just can't be at your peak all the time. You can't, or you're gonna burn out, or it's not your peak. You know what I mean? Or there's another level to get to. Um, I was just thinking about as you were saying that, like we were talking about Justin Best before this and his Instagram segments right now and like getting back into shape. So you look at him, right? Olympic gold medalist, has taken some time off from rowing specific training and is now trying to get back into shape for the LA Games, right? We're 2.5 years out from LA. And so I think that's a good example of this. Like he's not in his peak condition right now. And he's sharing that openly with everyone. He's sharing his erg scores. You know, if people are listening and they want to go look him up. He's not anywhere close to what he was at his peak in Paris. So it's natural for us to have a little bit of down to come back up. So you have to remember that you can't be at your peak all the time, or it's not your peak.
Yeah. And if to use Justin as an example, if he thought in the back of his mind all these workouts were, even as an Olympian, right? Like even as someone with the most success you can possibly have in this sport, which is win the Olympics. If he went through and did some of these workouts and had the mindset of, man, I'm not where I was. What is wrong? Like I'm, like I can't believe like this is. I used to be able to do this for steady state, and now I struggle to do it for 20 minutes. Like if that was his mindset, which I'm sure for any athlete on the path to success has been in those stages where they are not putting into proper perspective, he would probably have cycles too where it's just very, very challenging to put things in their proper place and then move forward to the next day where hopefully you get marginally better. If you keep thinking, well, I'm not where I was, I just got sick, I was out for a week, and this 3 by 20 minute is 5 splits off of where I used to be, and I'm a failure, like it's going to influence your ability to go about the next day and the next day and the next day, rather than having a short-term memory, putting it in its proper place of I haven't been training in the same way. In terms of, for Justin, I spent 6 to 12 months not focusing on being an Olympic athlete, and now I'm trying to work my way back to that level. Or you're a high school athlete who was on vacation over break with family for 2 weeks, and there was no ergs in sight, and all you could do was walk and hike and enjoy the experience. And now there's going to be a little bit of an acclimation. And if you think that you were who you are, or you think that your fitness is still where it was when you left 2 or 3 weeks ago, the answer is it probably actually is, but your rhythm and your proficiency with the stroke and your breathing and all those different things need to catch back up. Your fitness hasn't gone anywhere, right? If you're sick for 2 weeks, your fitness hasn't gone anywhere. You just need to give yourself mentally the grace to work your way back in. And I think a lot of people struggle with that, right? If you have athletes on your team, as you guys are starting to do your first few hard sessions of 2026, if you have athletes on your team who maybe got sick over break, or they, were doing, whatever other commitments, or they just made the honest mistake of, I didn't train at all, I missed it, right? Sorry, coach, like I'm struggling, right? Like that's going to be a natural reality. And if they go in with the mindset of I should be who I was in November, it's going to be a very difficult climb. If they go in with the mindset of I messed up, I didn't train, didn't touch the erg, lost motivation, I'm back in January, I got to start getting on it because I know I want to race in March and April. Okay, well now they have to incrementally build their way back up.
Yeah.
I want to be conscious of time and things like that. But what are any closing thoughts on that side of things? Just
I think like your first point was we've all been there. I think the tough thing for high school athletes and even college athletes is they haven't been there enough times and come back out to trust that you can come back out the other side. So lean on your coaches, lean on, mentors that have maybe been there before, and can kind of reassure you that like, hey, yeah, it's unfortunate you were sick for a couple of weeks and missed some training, but the good thing is it's only going to take a couple weeks to get it back. if you're focused and intent on what you're doing. So I think that's the scary thing for athletes is like they don't have as many years of experience of going through the ebbs and flows to trust that a little bump in the road doesn't mean that your car is broken down and not drivable. Like it's just a bump in the road.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Winter training, the time of year where, to me, it's where the real work gets put in, and then the spring is really just about refining it. But if you don't build that real work, or if you don't put that real work in, your foundation is quite unstable come spring. So it's like for everyone, college athletes, high school athletes, especially putting in that work now, coming back full circle to what we talked about, with developing the habits that can help position you for it. Awesome stuff. Delaney, short and sweet, in the sense, actually not even short and sweet. We're going for about an hour, which is getting lost in the conversation. Anything else on your mind? Anything else that we should be looking out for, thinking about, Eastern Michigan related, whatever related? I know we'll dive in again probably before sometime during the spring. We'll talk and dive into even more of these topics. But anything else before we close out?
Winter miles make spring smiles.
It's true. It's true as a statement as you can do. As true as a statement as you can get. I love it. Good luck as you guys kick off 2026 and get the entire team back on the ergs. I'm excited to hear how the 30-minute testing and all that stuff shakes out as you one of my favorite days when I was a college coach was that first 30-minute test of the fall and the first 30-minute test of the spring, and seeing who put in the work, who came back ready. So that was my favorite day, as crazy and sadistic as that sounds. I'm sure it is in a small part for every coach. They want to see who came back ready and who can we build on. So anyway, enjoy getting started, and we'll do it again soon. And thanks for coming on.
Cool. Thanks, Kev.